Hello, everyone. Welcome back to DHTV. I'm Chris Phillips. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We have an amazing topic to talk about. We're going to be talking about 12th gen Intel and the latest and greatest in components technology. To do it, we've got some great panelists here today. I'm going to introduce them right now. We're going to start with Michael Wilding. He's the account manager for NVIDIA. Michael, how's it going?
Hey, it's going well, Chris. Thanks for having me.
We also have Gus from NVIDIA. He's the North America channel manager. Gus, how's it going?
It's going great. It's good to be here and as well.
And we have everyone's favorite Barry Heller from Intel. He's a client specialist. Barry, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So before we get started in the conversation here, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping for you guys. Throughout the presentation, we encourage questions. If there's anything that comes up you want to ask more about, or an idea or something that you want to bring up, there is a Q&A section right there. I'll highlight it for you guys. Ask any questions, any comments. We will add those into the discussion and go from there. We also have a bunch of resources that are available for you to reference about the things we're talking about today, whether during the conversation or after the fact. Take a look at those when you can. We'll go for about 50 minutes here today, and hopefully we'll get to all you guys' questions, and we'll have a great topic, a great time talking. So to kind of kick things off, I'm going to start with the elephant in the room, and it's been the elephant in the room since really prior to the pandemic. We saw supply chain issues in semiconductors for at least the last 3 years. I want to kind of kick things off, and we'll start with you, Barry. How are the supply chain issues looking on the Intel side? What are they looking like today, and what are they kind of looking like going forward as we kind of go forward here into 2022?
Yeah, great question, Chris. I know this is front and foremost in most people's minds. So with regards to Intel, and specifically Intel processors, we are very healthy. Distribution is stocked up. There is no shortage in 12th gen, even 11th gen, 10th gen processors, and we are producing to exceed demand, and things are actually extremely well there. From a component side, Intel's an ingredient, right? So put together the entire solution. Of course, there are some challenges. There are things like power ICs and ICs for displays in notebooks, RF ICs, radio frequency ICs. Some of those components have lead times of in excess of 52 weeks. So some of the components necessary for boards and laptops and so forth are still under heavy constraints and allocation. But the great thing with Intel is that we've worked in the ecosystem with our partners to make sure that there are desktop motherboards and the components necessary to put together mobile computing solutions for customers. So while yes, the shortages are still there, we are actually very healthy.
That's awesome to hear, especially for any of the system builders out there that are looking for, like you said, even going back as far as 10th or 11th gen processors. The fact that they're still out there and you can get them as you need them is great to hear. And also to your point, there's other components involved, and we're starting to see those come back in stock. One of the largest components, especially on the system builder side, is the graphics card. So Gus, tell us how things are looking on the NVIDIA side.
So from the NVIDIA side, we did experience, of course, if I go back a couple of years ago with COVID-19, before that we already had a shortage, a little bit of a shortage going on because of the demand of new products. And when COVID hit, usually when, our tradition has been every time there is a, either economical or political, or in this case, pandemic, one of the things that we always do is that people, what they do the most is either entertainment and drinking, because they're spending a lot more time at home, and so
You don't
entertainment
say.
means.
I think everyone can relate to the final one there.
Exactly. And gaming is part of entertainment. So our president of the company, Jensen Huang, he actually, everybody in the market started decreasing. We're talking about the chip market. People were talking about, the shortages and all that, because especially the automobile industry, that's the one that started cutting their forecast. We actually increased ours. By doing that, our production actually almost doubled from 2020 to 2021. And we just couldn't keep up with the demand. And on top of that, you have the what we call the mining, or the miners, which is the Bitcoin and the Ethereum and all that. It just exploded, creating another vacuum to increase the gap between supply and demand, which was already, because everybody was staying home. People are gaming more from home. They're playing, or they're working from home because of the pandemic. So it really created a really difficult situation for a lot of customers. Because the demand was there, but you just didn't have, even though we had the supply, we just couldn't satisfy the supply, the demand. I'm sorry. We were even doubling our production capabilities. But the good news is that if we're looking at this year, there's things that are happening that we're seeing. Supply, we expect to get better in the next few weeks for two major factors. One of them is, of course, China. At the beginning of this year, they pretty much made it illegal to mine in China, and then we also have the situation in Europe, which is causing a lot of the board partners to start shifting inventory over to the U.S. because of the slowdown over there. So we do expect supply to get better in the next coming weeks. And this has already been confirmed with a lot of the board partners. So the expectation is that you're going to start seeing some. I believe the D&H, you guys just communicated to me yesterday that you're already implementing a sales out rebate for Asus. And usually, when you start seeing a sales out rebate, that's an indicator that you're going to, or you already have supply of product. So it's already starting to hit, especially with I don't remember the last time we saw a sales out rebate, because of the demand.
Right.
So this is actually good news. So that's what I have from my side.
Awesome. Well, I as we kind of keep going through here throughout 2022, I'm with you guys. I'm optimistic that things will start to improve, and we'll get there, especially since we're starting to see a more diversified catalog in terms of the cards that are coming out from the 30 series. When they first launched, you had your limited ones, but now you're seeing the 3050s, 3060s, and then more high-end ones. Higher diversity spreads it out, and it gives everyone a chance to purchase the right card for them, rather than any card they can get their hands on. So we're going to start talking about kind of the technologies here, the new technologies that are on the topic here today, and we're going to start on the Intel side. So Barry, real quick, real generally, can you tell us what's new with 12th gen Intel processors? I know that's a large question, but let's kind of start chopping away one at a time.
Yeah, it's a large question, and I don't want to take up too much time, talking about.
Please take up as many as you can.
All right, this is going to take about 30 minutes. So here's yeah. So last year we launched the end of the year we launched our 12th gen, and they were our K SKUs, which were typically overlocked. The key thing with 12th gen is this: 12th gen is built around what's known as a hybrid architecture, where we have cores that are similar to previous cores within the processor, and we've made those cores much higher performing and much larger memory sizes, on-die memory sizes, to support those cores. But we also include now in the 12th generation processors, and not all of them, I should put a caveat there. But a majority of 12th gen processors also contain what is known as efficiency cores.
Hmm.
And the efficiency cores are these smaller cores. They're extremely power optimized. They use a fraction of the power, but they're designed to increase the performance for multitasking and multi-threaded environments, and especially background tasks, so that these background tasks, as they continue to increase on
Yeah.
client platforms, don't impact the performance of the user in the foreground. Think real-time virus scanning. Think the list is endless
Yes.
actually, but
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it. And by and large, we have just seen tremendous praise and acceptance for the new 12th gen. It really is. It's a considerable leap over previous generations, and a considerable leap over anything that our competition has out today. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably the good 50,000-foot view.
Yeah, because there's really a lot more we can dive into, especially when you start talking about those efficiency cores, because it's usually something we've only seen in a mobile platforms in the past, where you've had to have cores that needed to run more efficiently just for battery life purposes, but now doing it in a fashion where these efficiency cores aren't sitting there for power purposes, more for background purposes. Can you tell us a little bit about what Intel Thread Director is and how that affects how processes are spread out over the 12th gen processors?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I'll do the best I can to explain this at a high level. So you've got these mixture of cores. And the operating system needs to know, okay, well, what software thread do I throw at what particular core? In the past, that wasn't that big of a deal because there wasn't a ton of cores um, in the processor. But today, that has changed. So what we've done is we've built an intelligence layer in the processor called the Intel Thread Director. And what the Intel Thread Director does is it relays real-time information to the operating system scheduler. So the OS scheduler can determine, hey, this is a high priority thread, this is a low priority thread. High priority threads are going to go to the performance cores. Lower priority threads are going to go to the efficiency cores. But it doesn't stop there because it looks at what speed the cores are capable of running at in that particular time, how busy the processor is in general, the temperature of individual cores. It's all of this data in real time, and we're talking nanoseconds here, is constantly relayed back to the operating system scheduler. So it's really the secret sauce that
Yeah.
today we're, in some benchmarking, you can see an increase in performance there with regards to adequate implementation by the OS scheduler. And by that, I mean Windows 10 versus Windows 11. Windows 11, we worked with Microsoft to incorporate the scheduling with regards to Thread Director.
Hmm.
Not so much with Windows 10 because Windows 10 is on its way out from their
Yeah.
perspective. But today, you don't really see much performance delta. However, as time goes on, you're going to see a much bigger performance delta because of that thread director and the intelligence built in.
So, if people want to kind of get the most out of the thread director and these efficiency cores, they're more likely to want to be on Windows 11 versus 10, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're a system builder, you're building a new system, go Windows 11 by far. You're going to get the best bang for the buck, and I would say there too, go with DDR5. But
Hmm.
if you're an established business that has not transitioned over, or you have customers where their business hasn't transitioned over from Windows 10 to 11, Windows 10 works great. And really, nearly all the benchmarks show very little performance delta between 10 and 11 running the same benchmark on the same set of hardware. You can
So
see 2-3%.
yeah.
Not much.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, as the software starts to catch up with this new hardware, we'll start to see more greater impact on kind of those benchmarks.
For
Theodore
sure.
had a
No, go
yeah.
ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead. You finish your point. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, as applications become more sophisticated, as artificial intelligence and virtualized
Yeah.
environments become more used, believe me when I tell you, that's where it's really going to start to shine.
Cool. Theodore had a great question. He was asking, is there a simple, effective way to explain to customers coming from the previous generation Intel processors what the core and thread counts mean anymore? Many customers are getting CPUs and are confused when they see 12 cores, 20 threads, and that doesn't have a one-to-one comparison to the past generation stuff. It comes down to those efficiency cores, doesn't it?
It does. Efficiency cores don't have hyperthreading, so that they can't act on two threads at one time. But the performance cores and the traditional cores from the past have Intel's hyperthreading, so that if a software thread is utilizing different resources within a core, two threads can actually be executed at the same time. And that's why you're seeing, not
this
this
weird thread counts, yeah.
Yeah, if there's 6 cores, okay, it's 12 threads, but that's not the case with 12th gen, because the performance cores can do 2 threads at a time, and the efficiency cores can do a single thread at a time.
Yeah. And over time, I think that stuff will become less relevant to your customers. They'll just kind of understand the performance gains when you start getting past the 12th gen processors with those efficiency cores.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we used to talk about how many transistors were built into the processor, billions, how much cache was on. We used to talk about all that stuff. At the end of the day, for your customer, all they care about, am I getting more performance for my dollar? And that's what 12th gen brings you. And every generation tends to do that. More performance for your computing dollar.
Speaking of performance and dollars, DDR5 memory, both high performance and high dollars. The major question I see over and over again is really twofold. Is DDR5 memory worth it? And B, can I still use DDR4 memory if I either A, don't like the price point of 5 right now, or B, don't need the performance increases from it right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm gonna answer it in a couple of ways. First off, we developed the 12th generation processor to work with either DDR4 or DDR5, because we want to be forward looking. We're the only CPU out there that supports DDR5, and DDR5 is the future. Quite honestly, it's lower power, it has much greater bandwidth, and you can clock it at much higher speeds. Not to mention the density of the actual DRAM chip is much greater with DDR5. So DDR5 is where the industry is going to, and we wanted to be forward looking there. However, we designed the 12th gen processor to work with either. The thing is this, it's up to the board manufacturer or the system manufacturer to build their platform for either DDR4 or DDR5. You can't put a DDR5 DIMM in a DDR4 socket and vice versa. And if the board's designed for DDR4, it won't work with DDR5. If the board's designed for DDR5, it won't work with DDR4. So you have a choice. It's the same processor, but it really comes down to the board. And if you want to have something that is kind of looking forward, and you'll be able to upgrade the memory in the future to really take advantage of what DDR5 can bring, then go with a DDR5 board. You pay a premium for DDR5 today, just because it's the what's that? The economy of scale, right? There's a bazillion DDR4 DIMMs, and they're just ramping DDR5. So there's a price premium for DDR5, but believe me when I tell you, you're set, and you're set to just upgrade memory in the future and see noticeable performance increases and um, uh, memory sizes. A
Mm-hmm.
DIMM module with DDR4 is really maxed out at 512 gig. You can go to 2 terabytes with DDR5 on a single DIMM, right? So it's not just going to be in the desktop space, in the server space. I mean, DDR5 will become the dominant memory architecture in over probably the next, well, when does it take, when does it exceed DDR4? That remains to be seen, but
Mm-hmm.
clearly the future is DDR5.
It's the same reason. Like, do we talk about DDR2 and 3 anymore? No, because they became obsolete, and 4
That's
will get
right.
there at some point. This might be a more technical question, but I saw something in there that was asking about memory channels for DDR5. Are they the same as DDR4? I believe most Intel processors usually had 2 memory channels. Is that correct?
Yeah, for desktop boards, it's still 2 memory channels.
Okay.
So yeah, with DDR4 and DDR5, that's the same. What's really changed is the bandwidth and the speed and the density of the DIM, not the DIM, but the DRAM chip itself. Those are
All right.
the key things that have changed.
One last one for you. I heard there were some new changes for vPro. So what's new with vPro out there?
Wow. Okay. So I don't want to dominate our discussion here, but here's the thing. vPro has evolved to now a portfolio of products. So
Okay.
the Intel vPro platform, powered by the 12th generation processors, not only brings new vPro features, both security and management features, but we now have vPro platforms that are geared towards different market segments. So, for instance, we have the traditional vPro, which
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you'll see as referred to as vPro for enterprise. And that's full featured vPro, all the latest and greatest security and manageability tools. However, we now have a new family of vPro products geared towards small and medium business because some of the small and medium businesses that use vPro, that want a vPro platform, they want all these security features that vPro brings to the table, but they don't take advantage of all of these management features that you get in the full-fledged vPro. So we have a new portfolio product called vPro Essentials. And vPro Essentials brings most of the security features over without having all of the management features. You can still manage it, but you don't have the palette of management features that you have with the full-blown vPro. The best thing about it is you can provide a vPro platform at a lower price point. And that's why it's geared towards smaller and medium businesses. In addition to that, we now have vPro for Chrome. We've never had vPro for
Whoa.
Chrome.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, because more and more businesses are deploying Chromebooks in their enterprise. So now you can manage it in the same way with Google's, admin console, but we've built security features, hardware-based security features into the platform, the vPro platform for Chromebooks, and already starting to ship vPro Chromebooks, as well as multiple ones will be following over the next few months. So this is an exciting new category for us as well. So now, in addition to Windows, you can have vPro running on Chrome OS.
Wow, that's fantastic news. Especially like you said, there's a lot of security benefits to vPro, and I'm glad to see that kind of, like you said, expanding its portfolio and making it more readily available to up and down the devices, up and down the stack.
Yeah,
That's great for
Chris,
everybody.
it's the security features that are really, some of the driving force with vPro today, because these are hardware-based security features. We're the only company doing this. And we work with the ecosystem so that software vendors can take advantage of these new hardware security features like a ransomware detector,
Mm-hmm.
and other features that protect the system above, at, and below the operating system. So I could talk for the next hour on just the security features alone, but I'll leave it at that.
Jeff was asking real quick, is there a complete onboarding recording on the IPA website that covers everything that's new with vPro? If there is, we can get you the link. Right, Barry?
Yeah, I'll have to check on that. I honestly don't know, but I will
Well,
find out for you.
I'll put
Yeah.
I'll put a flag on that question, Jeff, and if we get a link for you, we will send it out after the fact. We'll add it to the resources for everyone that's watching on the recording or come back on demand. We'll have that link out there as well. There are other Intel questions, but I want to kind of move on and talk to Michael about Intel. So we'll loop back with you, Barry, in a couple minutes. Michael, how's it going, man?
It's going. How are you doing?
It is going. That is about the most apt way of referring to things right now. It's going. The Intel 30 series, great series of cards. It's been out for over a year now. The lineup, as we talked about earlier in the broadcast, has expanded quite a bit since its launch. Can you tell us a little bit of how the Intel lineup, or the NVIDIA lineup is looking now, a year plus into its life?
Yeah, I think right now we're definitely at a point where we are, we're pretty happy with the outgoing product line. I think we cover quite a bit of bases. We have offerings from the 3050, more of your entry level RTX SKU, all the way up to the 3090, which is obviously your high end gaming / creative SKU. We do have some more to talk about, but have to kind of stay tuned in the coming weeks to hear more about what else we have to offer there. But I think as of right now, we're really happy with how the entire lineup looks.
Yeah, there's something up and down for everyone. If you're just trying to do 1080p gaming, or you're trying to get 8K gaming, there's something out there for you. But a lot of people only kind of look at a graphics card and think about it as this thing I need to push out pixels and graphics to my machine. They don't know about the other technology that exists within the NVIDIA cards, and I think that's where we want to focus our talk today. Can you kind of talk about some of the technology that exists within the Intel graphics cards? And we'll start with the Intel reflex technology, because that's one of the newer ones that Intel's added to the portfolio.
Yeah, the NVIDIA reflex. It's okay.
We were talking I'm going to blame Barry because we talked Intel for 30 freaking minutes.
It's Barry's fault. It's Barry's fault.
It's always Barry's fault.
I apologize. Yeah. Eventually we will have some graphics cards out there, but not yet.
Yeah. Go ahead and talk about NVIDIA reflex.
Just to kind of reiterate your point, when folks look at graphics cards, obviously the first thing that comes to mind is performance. Let's be honest. I mean, they're looking at benchmarks. They're looking at bar graphs, seeing who outperforms what, who does what at what resolution, and that is still a very important topic for today. There's still a lot more to the story to talk about, and I think that's where really NVIDIA shines above some of its competition. Now you mentioned reflex. Now reflex is actually really cool technology. It's one that many people today, even if they haven't had a chance to get their hands on an RTX 30 series, it actually works with cards that go all the way back to the 900 series. So if you have a GTX 970, you can use this technology. And this technology really is really two major technologies. I'll talk about really one of them today, which is essentially an SDK that contains a set of APIs that game developers can use to integrate into their game engines. And the whole purpose of this technology is really to reduce render latency. Not only with the SDK can they reduce render latency, but they can also measure it. So the big deal about reducing render latency is that when a game supports reflex and the end user enables it, really what it does is it really helps that gamer acquire targets faster, mitigate peaker's advantage, and really just overall improve their gaming precision. So, it's more of a competitive gamer type technology, even though we just introduced it in God of War as of late. So, not really a competitive game, but it still has its advantages there. But, we actually have this technology integrated in, I think it's 13 of the top 15 competitive shooters right now. So it's definitely gaining some momentum. We currently have it integrated into Unreal Engine, and I think it's actually a plugin right now into the Unity game engine as well. So it's definitely gaining momentum. We have some more games to announce soon that will be supporting the technology. And folks out there, if the system builders on the line or other partners on the line want to measure its effectiveness, all you would have to do is go to GeForce Experience and enable the performance overlay. And once it's enabled, you can jump into a game. You can press Alt-R, which is the hotkey, and you can actually physically see what your rendering latency is. And you can see if there's an improvement once you turn it on. Typically it works better when you're GPU bound, right? So if you're playing a game and your GPU utilization is at 98% or greater, you're going to see the biggest effects, right? Yeah. If you're playing a game that's more CPU bound, it might not have as much of an effect as it would, again, if it was GPU bound. But overall, I would encourage everybody to take a look at it and certainly talk about it with your customers when it comes to, especially new gamers on the scene that are coming from console, they're moving to PC gaming, they want to play Call of Duty, they want to play Tarkov, they want to play whatever. This is a technology that they can certainly utilize.
Technology I could have used when back in November when Intel's 12th gen held a little friendly disty tournament in Valorant, and my 36-year-old reflexes were not as they were when I played Counter-Strike when I was in my teens. So I could have used that technology for a little help. Maybe we would have finished higher than 4th. But
I'm right there with you. Yeah, it's and I had played an Overwatch tournament not long ago, and we didn't do so well. So.
Yeah, it's you got to take every little bit of advantage you can, and if you can't compete with the human reflexes, you got to get extra hardware reflexes, and that's where NVIDIA will help out with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another one that I was using a lot early in the pandemic was NVIDIA Broadcast. Can you tell people a little bit about NVIDIA Broadcast, because I think it's a fantastic tool.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly talk about it, and if we have time, I can actually show a live demo.
Go ahead and show a little bit of
that are interested.
Let's see a demo real quick.
Just a quick synopsis. Realistically, NVIDIA Broadcast is really just an app that transforms any home space or home studio really into a place where you can start to professionally broadcast to an extent, right? It's built to kind of get people into not only game streaming, making video content, etc., but it really helps kind of promote the ability to do so. So it is a standalone utility. It does require an RTX graphics card in order to utilize it. But I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen here, so if you all can see the utility itself. Hopefully it's popping up here. But this is what the application looks like. So it really kind of comes in 3 separate categories. I'm using it right now, so hopefully you don't hear any background noise because I am utilizing it. But the first category is the microphone. The major effect that NVIDIA Broadcast offers is something called noise removal. So if I was to disable this effect right now, you may hear some background noise if I stop talking, but if I start clapping my hands, you're going to hear it, right? I'm clapping my hands. It's loud. It's annoying. Sorry for folks that online that blew out your eardrum. But I'm going to continue to clap, and I'm going to enable it, and you're going to hear it just start to cancel out some of the background noise, and I'm going to be able to talk while I'm doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and start clapping. I'm going to go ahead and enable it. So you might still hear a little noise, but as you can see now, I'm talking while I'm clapping my hands, and it's still doing a pretty good job at cutting out that background noise. So this is really important. If you got folks with a window AC unit, if you got dogs or animals in the background, you share a room with a roommate, this really does a great job of cutting out background noise while you're in a meeting, while you're recording YouTube video or streaming on Twitch. So it's really a great technology. Now the second part of this is also the speakers. So what you can do is essentially the reverse. So let's say you are you're playing a game with a friend, right? And all you hear is their Cherry MX switches clapping away, and you don't want to hear that the whole time you're gaming. So if you enable this option on their end, it's really on your end, but it affects your speakers. It will actually cancel out that clacking of their mechanical keyboard. Or again, if they have dogs or roommates in the background that you can hear, this does a great job at minimizing it, if not eliminating it. And then the last feature is the camera feature. So sorry, you can see two of me now, so I do apologize for that. But this is still in beta, so it's consistently being updated. But here you can see, my webcam. It's a relatively inexpensive webcam. You can select the resolutions here. But the big thing here is that, as you can see, my background is completely being replaced. If I click it off, you see this is my environment right now, and I can quickly, change my background. I can also do a background blur. So I can completely blur my background. I can even do a background removal. So if I want to, engage myself into a game, let's say I'm using OBS, which is a very popular program for streaming folks and folks that like to create YouTube content. I can put myself in the game. I can move myself into the corner. I can kind of, blow myself up, shrink myself, however it looks. And, it really immerses your audience, even more so with you actually being front and stage of the game. And then the other thing I wanted to show off here in the camera section is that the video noise removal option. Now this webcam I'm using, it's not expensive. It's very low cost camera. The lighting in here is not really great. So what this does is it helps remove all the noise, or most of the noise it can, in the image. So if you are using, let's say, less expensive equipment, it will help make some of this equipment seem better than it actually is. We also have a technology called auto frame. So if I was to move around, it will actually follow my head as I move myself, which is a pretty cool technology as well. So that's kind of NVIDIA Broadcast in a nutshell. And again, it's a free download. It's a utility that you can utilize on any system. It does utilize the tensor cores that are found on all of our RTX GPUs. So it does have an AI algorithm that it does utilize. So again, you do need an RTX card in order to utilize it, but it's something you can certainly educate your customers about and get them excited about, something that they can utilize as part of their gaming system.
Cool. Yeah, I was using that early on in the pandemic just for simple background removal and WebEx calls, and that kind of evolved to, like you were showing, trying to block out my 2-year-old from screaming just because she's a 2-year-old and she wants she wants people to acknowledge her presence. So it's a fantastic tool, and we had a couple of people asking, is this free? Yes, it's free.
Absolutely.
Where is it available to download?
Just go into Google and type in NVIDIA RTX Broadcast. Yeah, or sorry, NVIDIA Broadcast. Type in NVIDIA Broadcast. You'll find a link for it, and it's a free download. Try it out.
Cool. What about the DLSS features that exist within the NVIDIA graphics cards? What exactly is that? Because there's been a lot of talk about that recently, of games that don't use it versus games that do use it. It seems like every time I load up NVIDIA's website, there's another game that now supports it. What exactly is that technology, and how does it affect the performance and graphics in a game?
Yeah, of course. So, DLSS is a technology we've introduced a little over 2 years ago at this point. But essentially, DLSS stands for Deep Learning Super Sampling. So really, in short, what it is, it's an AI super resolution technique that allows the game engine or the game that you're playing to render fewer pixels, and then an AI algorithm essentially fills in those pixels using higher resolution base images. So to kind of keep it as simple as possible, let's say you're playing a game at 4K, right? A new AAA game at 4K. Your RTX, let's say you have a 3050, 2060. It's really not cutting the mustard in that game, right? It's 4K, 2060, 3050. It's not really made for that type of resolution. If you enable DLSS in that title, let's say we have a couple different options to choose from as far as quality. But if you choose the performance option, what it essentially does is it allows the game engine to only render that game at 1080p, and then it upscales it to 4K. Okay, so to kind of put that in perspective, the GPU is only rendering 1 pixel while the other 3 pixels are being rendered by the AI algorithm. Okay, so that's being driven by our AI cores, right, or tensor cores. So not only does it increase performance, but it increases it dramatically, right? I mean, we're talking, going from rendering 1080p to nearly 4 times the pixels at 4K. It's a drastic difference in performance. And we've introduced RTX. We have ray tracing of all different types out there with a lot of different games. And having an option like DLSS really helps, drive the performance up in those very demanding games and titles. So I think we have over 100, 150 games right now that support DLSS, and it's also integrated into all the most popular game engines out there. So it's getting easier and easier for devs to implement. And we got a lot more to share on that in the future as well.
Cool. And one of the longest reigning, I don't know a better way to say this, but one of the pieces of technology that NVIDIA has had for quite some time is GSync. For those who don't know what GSync is and what its advantages is, you want to take a couple seconds to talk about GSync and how it pairs with specific monitors.
Yeah, so GSync is a technology we introduced back, I think, in 2015. I think when Maxwell came out, I believe, if I recall correctly. But in a nutshell, really, it allows, tearing and artifacts, usually tearing, have been an issue in games for as long as I can remember, right? So let's say you're playing a game at 100 frames per second, and your monitor only supports a refresh rate of 60 hertz, right? So the most you're going to see your monitor display is essentially 60 hertz, which equates to about 60 frames, right? So what happens is that when your GPU is rendering more frames than your monitor is capable of seeing, it sometimes causes the screen or image to tear, right? Just have some of these visual anomalies. And it's not a great experience for the end user at all. So when we developed the G-Sync technology, we first developed it as an on-chip solution, and then eventually, basically became a standard, or we worked with the standard to essentially have it as a non-chip option. And so right now, you're going to see a couple of different displays out there with G-Sync enabled. And really, what it does is it syncs the frame rate of your graphics card with the hertz or refresh rate of your monitor, so you don't get that tearing, right? So if it's going to 100 frames, you're not going to see tearing, but if it drops down, below 45 frames, you're not going to experience stutter like you would with your traditional vSync. So,
Nice.
We have a lot of solutions out there, starting from G-Sync compatible monitors to standard G-Sync monitors, and then G-Sync Ultimate monitors, and they're all different stages. G-Sync compatible is like your entry-level G-Sync monitor, and you go all the way up to Ultimate, which has your lowest latency, your highest HDR capability, and 10-bit color, 8-bit color, etc.
I've been looking at one of those G-Sync Ultimate monitors for a while. I just can't. My bank account doesn't want me to pull the trigger on it, so it just kind of sits there. Like one day I'll have it.
Yeah, the G-Sync compatible. I mean, I'll be honest. I use a G-Sync compatible monitor here at home. 4K, 144 hertz. It's excellent. It works.
I have a G-Sync compatible, and even then, you can actually notice the difference when you have a non-G-Sync monitor, and you do see that tearing. Even compatible just helps tremendous. With that. There's one last thing I wanted to talk about on the NVIDIA side. It's not really a system builder's feature, but I wanted you to talk briefly about what NVIDIA Studio is and how the benefits that it could have for system builders.
Yeah, I think, looking at it from a system builder perspective, we have a lot of validated NVIDIA Studio systems that are out there in the market right now. A lot of them are laptops. We do have a few desktops, but, it's the Studio platform as a whole is really geared towards, folks that don't need Quadro systems, but don't necessarily want gaming systems, right? They need the GPU horsepower, but they don't need what a Quadro has to offer. So it's really geared towards like your video editors, your 3D and rendering, photography, graphic design, broadcasting, architectural visualization, etc. So for folks that use it for work, right, they want to utilize and harness the power of our RTX GPUs, right? So this platform as itself has a standalone driver. So we have a Studio driver. So if there's folks here on the phone that want to build a system for, let's say, one of those occupations I just listed, they have the ability to download and install a Studio driver. Now, what that means is that these drivers have been validated to work with over 200 creative applications that are industry-wide. Okay, so the main focus here is reliability and stability, right? Okay. So you think about all these, Adobe applications out there. There's tons of them. You got Autodesk on top of that. You got Blender, Octane Renderer, V-Ray, game engines, all these applications that are used every day by professionals. Their main focus is they want performance and they want stability. That's what the studio drivers really bring to the table. They don't update as often as our NVIDIA GeForce game ready drivers. So they're, again, they're validated. They're to ensure that stability is the primary offering here. And so, it also integrates with NVIDIA's Omniverse technology, which I don't know if you guys know too much about that, but it's essentially a platform. It's an on-prem solution for companies that are looking for their creatives to essentially collaborate in one basically plane. And so we just announced at GTC 22 that we're going to be offering a cloud version of that. So it doesn't need to be an on-prem solution, which is really cool. But again, going back to studio, I mean, it is a solution for folks that are looking to use it for work. I would highly encourage you to try out the studio drivers in lieu of the GeForce, drivers to see if you can leverage some of the stability there and performance for some of those applications.
Whenever you start talking about Omniverse, it starts sounding a little bit sci-fi, and that's going to be the next thing that shows up in a Marvel movie. I think that's more the
metaverse. The metaverse stuff sounds a little sci-fi.
Oh,
the Omniverse stuff is. Yeah, the Omniverse stuff is more, think about it as more of a collaboration tool, right? So let's say you have a company that's, that has obviously employees that are across the globe and they're trying to work together on a specific project, right? Omniverse allows them to do that and collaborate in real time on the same project, right? But again, the solution we have now is an on-prem solution. So you're setting up racks and servers with this in mind, right? Again, we just announced a cloud-based version of that, so it has a bit more capability when it comes to its reach.
As much as the people behind the metaverse want you to think we're all putting on our headsets yet, we ain't putting on our headsets quite yet. It's not quite there. Speaking of, we've got a bunch of people that have a lot of great questions here in chat, so I want to kind of start heading through these as we're starting to come up to the top of the hour. And if you guys have any additional questions you want to ask, now is the time. Barry, we're going to start with you because Barry has a couple questions for you. Barry asked, are there any next-gen server products that are expected to be available in Q3 as planned? Or are the next-gen, excuse me?
Yeah, actually, as far as I know, I mean, I deal mostly with client, but in everything that I have heard from our server division, we are on track to launch those next-gen server products in Q3 of this year.
Cool. Barry also asked, he said, ask Barry about 12th gen NUCs, and are they DDR4 or 5? What else is the difference between the 11th gen NUCs?
Yeah, so great question. So here's the thing with the next gen or 12th gen NUCs. First off, we were hoping to launch them in Q2, and unfortunately that was delayed due to the components challenges that we're having in that segment. On a good note, if there is one there, we do see some potential for some upsides with our 11th generation NUC, known as Tiger Canyon, for those that play along with the Intel code name from that perspective. So the 12th gen is known as Wall Street Canyon. And with regards to the 12th gen, when we do launch it in Q3, will ramp in Q3 and in Q4 of this year. It is designed around DDR4, and more specifically DDR4 3200 megahertz DIMMs. So yeah, it will run with DDR4 as opposed to DDR5. And I think one of the reasons they made that design choice was because the NUCs use SO DIMMs. So SO DIMMs are small outline DIMMs. They're used in notebooks, and the decision was made when we were designing the product to go with the DDR4 because of what we looked at availability of DDR5 SO DIMMs in that time frame. So they will be DDR4.
All right. Paul had a question specifically around next gen Intel's how much heat they put off. How does they handle heat, especially on the notebook side of things? We're hearing a lot of things that the 12th gen Intel processors are running a little bit hotter than previous ones. What's going on that front with 12th gen?
Yeah, it's always fun fodder, so to speak,
Yes.
with regards to, heat. I don't think anybody does a better job with design characteristics for processors than we do here, at Intel. We have our low power 12th gen mobile processors. We're going to utilize all the mobile processors, by the way, will have that are based on 12th gen, will have the efficiency cores. The efficiency cores generate much less heat. Their clock speeds are lower than the performance cores, and they actually draw considerably less power. So we'll still have our 9 to 15 watt 12th gen mobile processor segment. We'll also have a 25 to 28 watt segment. And then we'll have those high performing mobile processors that run in that 45 watt band. And they'll be designated with an H for those 45 watt parts, and a P for the 28 watt parts, and a U for the 15 watt, and below. But we're not seeing issues with heat at all in the mobile space. And I will say, these are built on Intel's new, the Intel 7 process, which some will look back and say, well, this is 10 nanometer, but that doesn't even make any sense anymore, because that nomenclature for it is just ridiculous anymore. It doesn't make any sense. It's a marketing thing. But our 7 process is, if you want to look at it from equivalent standpoint, it's actually more equivalent to like TSMC's, what they're referring to as 7 nanometer, even though that doesn't make any sense anymore. So, that's why we dropped those nanometer nomenclatures from it, because it really doesn't apply. So anyway, that's my diatribe there on process technology.
That's fine. There's 2 more questions I want to get to real quick before we kind of get to the top of the hour. I know we're kind of coming close. Chris wanted to know, recently the President Biden announced the $5 billion chip fund to help onshore domestic chip manufacturing. How will this have an impact on both Intel and NVIDIA's business over the course of the next 5 to 10 years? It's a little early to say, but what are your guys' thoughts on what you predict will happen?
Well, I'll run it first, Mike, and I'll leave you enough time. The specifics of that and how that's going to be doled out, so to speak, are unknown to me at this time. Yeah. What I can say is that Intel is making a huge investment in onshore manufacturing. So most of you probably have heard Intel's been in the news a lot lately. We've announced a $20 billion multi-fab installation in Ohio, and we break ground on that very, very soon. And that's just to continue to increase the silicon manufacturing here in the U.S. In addition, Intel is now expanding its presence in the foundry space. So almost all of our silicon manufacturing takes place here in the U.S. And what we're going to start doing much more in a bigger way is producing silicon chips for other folks. And so that's a big deal for us. In addition, we're taking about $100 million and investing it in Ohio's education system to make sure that the next generation coming up will have the designers and engineers necessary to move America's silicon leadership forward.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Michael, Gus, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Gus, I don't know if you want to speak for this or not.
Sure. Yes. Yeah, we do have. That's Barry mentioned. It's too early to tell. One thing we're doing is we continue to solidify the relationship that we have with the current suppliers that are building this wafer for us, and we'll continue to explore as the gaming business continue to explode year over to year. So, but it's too early to tell who's really gonna It all depends. It has to do with who has the technology, who has the support that we need, the capacity that we're looking for. If we decide, when it's time to expand our supplier, list, I would say.
I haven't been. Politics not my forte, but the only thing I can know about politics is nothing's ever for sure. So I think the answer is it's too early to tell. Is probably the correct one. Guys, we're coming up to the top of the hour. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us today. You guys provided tons of great information. If there's any questions any of the viewers have that you kind of come up with over the next little bit or we didn't get to, please check your inboxes. We will do our best to make sure that every question that you guys asked, we can get you guys a sufficient answer for. But Barry, Michael, Gus, thank you guys so much for joining us here today. Thank you everyone for watching. If you guys have any additional questions after this broadcast, please email us at solutionslab@dnh.com and we'll be happy to answer those questions. We will be live once again. The Solutions Lab will be live on March 29th at 2 p.m. We'll be talking with Microsoft about Windows 11 and all the new features that exist within Windows 11 for the hybrid workforce. I'm always excited to talk to them about Windows 11, so I can't wait for that. Our registration page will be available at the end of this broadcast, so check your inbox for that. But guys, thank you so much for all your wisdom today, and thank you very much for your time, and see you guys later.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, Mike, and Gus. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Hopefully I'll see some of you folks at the Hershey Show.
Yeah, can't wait to see you guys in person.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Take care, guys.
All right, take care, everyone.
Take care.